Hello everyone, this is Rocky Pista with Vivid. Today you're listening to the Cloudburst, your application performance testing needs SIG webinar. Next. So this is brought to you by the Vivid U.S. Government Solutions Special Interest Group. That's Robert Linton, now with Micro Focus Government Solutions, and Prasad Nimatatha, who's a project delivery manager at Tech Invest. So these guys run the actual SIG that you're listening to today, and you could be a part of to get all the latest information relevant to practitioners in the U.S. government solution side of the Micro Focus tools. Next. Again, I'm Rocky Pisto. I'm a longtime Vivid leader. I'm focused on the ITOM side of the house with APM and OpsBridge and those kind of tools. Was a partner for 30 years and run lugs in the Midwest. Next. So today's speakers are Robert Linton, who's a business consultant, again with Micro Focus Government Solutions, and Russ Inman, who's a sales engineer, will be doing color commentating for us as well from Government Solutions. Next. So those of you that are on the call, this is live, it's being recorded, and it'll be available to all Vivid members. We're going to have an area where you can ask questions. So type them in the question panel, and we can address them today, or if we can't get to them today, then they'll be addressed once the recording comes out. Bob, the next slide. And here's where you can see the actual control panel where the questions can be entered. Next. So with that, Bob, I'm handing it over to you.
Thanks, Rocky. Appreciate that introduction. Good day to everybody that's joined us here for this Vivid webinar, wherever you may be joining us from in the United States or around the globe. We are going to speak today about our Cloudburst testing solution as it pertains to performance testing, your mission critical business applications. I wanted to start off with our AVM mission, because we here at Micro Focus have always had your quality, security, and performance aspects in mind at every stage of the application lifecycle. And we are the only vendor to provide an integrated end-to-end application lifecycle management solution that is built to support any methodology, technology, and/or delivery model. So those three areas, quality, security, and performance, are very critical to our mission in supporting your testing needs. Today, we're going to talk a little bit as this pertains to the government agencies, but it applies across the board in the commercial world also. And as we, people that have been working in the testing arena for years, know that using traditional methods, you don't always precisely get to simulate or replicate the application environment from a production point of view while you're in dev and test. And using some of our Micro Focus solutions, we can help you bridge that gap and more closely emulate or simulate those real user experiences. When we talk about going to the cloud, we've been involved in moving workload to the cloud for the last 5 or 6 years. And back when we started, the concerns were things like security and cost and performance. But based on feedback from government agencies recently, those aren't the biggest issues today in leveraging cloud. Actually, government procurement appears to be one of the biggest bottlenecks for IT organizations getting what they want in the cloud environments. So if we're not able to simulate and test in a near real world scenario or environment similar to what would be in production, we can introduce risk into our software development and production deployments. And those risks can include these things that are listed here. And part of what we're trying to do by testing more and shifting the testing left into this DevSecOps pipeline model is to alleviate and identify the issues before they become risk as we move into production. So we're going to be trying to address some of those concerns in our automated solutions. So right now we're going to have a first poll question for the audience, and Rocky will open up the poll.
You bet. So the quick poll is up, and the question is, are you currently performing load and stress testing on your team's projects? And we'll just give it a few seconds here. You can answer yes, no, not sure, and then we'll bring back the stats to Bob. So is this, from your perspective, Bob, does this kind of guide the practitioner into, you know, what they should be doing going forward if they're doing this or not doing this?
I think this poll question is just to kind of gauge the attendees, the audience, if they're new to performance testing or if they're a, you know, tried and true experienced performance engineer. So just to kind of get an idea of what's happening in the different projects that the attendees are working on.
Great. So Terry, let's bring up the stats. There we go. So Bob, just so you know, we've got the answer is yes to 60%, 20% no, and 20% not sure if they're actually performing these load and stress testings.
Well, that does not surprise me in general. And again, part of the reason why we're doing this webinar today is to share this information and knowledge with Vivit members that could then go back to their organizations and introduce this capability and see if they can add it to their application lifecycle to get more benefit and to help reduce those risks before they move into production. So specifically today, why cloud-based load testing? Many of us that are on this call have probably been around, used LoadRunner, Performance Center, and other testing tools for performance in the past. And they all are great tools that work well. But because today's world is getting to be more of a global environment in general, and even many of our government agencies have people that are stationed all around the United States and actually all around the globe, cloud-based testing has come to a point where it's beneficial, especially when you're trying to simulate these peak loads. So you may be doing performance testing today for 100 virtual users or even 1,000 virtual users on a regular basis. But all of a sudden you want to do a peak load of like 5,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 virtual users. The cloud-based testing solutions that we're going to talk about and demonstrate today provide that capability in a very quick and easy method to accomplish that peak load of your load testing. While doing that, you also get to save on the infrastructure cost, because in the cloud, we can spin up the environment, use it, and then stop it and delete it, and you're only paying for that infrastructure while you're running the test. And as I've alluded to, you can test from various global locations all around the globe. You select those locations and incorporate that into your load test scenario. So how does Cloudburst work? Cloudburst is a Silk product that is part of the Silk Performance suite of tools. And just like with any other performance test that you might be doing in any other technology, you still have to create a script, and then you have to validate that you can connect to the application under test. I'll show you this in the demo. And then you actually spin up the load agents, or the load generators, as some people refer to them. And you can choose whether to do that in AWS Cloud or Azure Cloud or a Google Cloud or any cloud that you want to have the agents in. But the automatic spin up is currently only available in AWS, Azure, and Google. And then finally, you approve the cost of running the test, you run it, and you review the results that are available in real time. So how is Cloudburst architected? How does it work? Well, as I alluded to, as you see in the bottom of the screen, we still have to have a Silk Performer script that's going to run the load against the application under test. You have to have the controller, which can be installed either locally on-prem, or that Silk Performer controller can also be loaded in the cloud, which is where I will demonstrate it to you today from the AWS Gov Cloud. And then you can have local agents that are on-prem, or you can use the cloud agents, which you see at the top of the screen in US East, US West, or Asia South. And so your cloud burst is going to connect to those agents in those cloud regions that you select, and you have the complete control over which agents you're going to use in what region. And then once you connect to those agents, they will drive the load to the application under test. So whether the load is coming from the cloud, it has to go to the application under test, or if it's coming from the local Silk Performer agent that's on-prem, they still have to be able to connect to the application under test. And then when you're done with the test, all the results get sent back to the Silk Performer to produce the report. Any questions? Okay, so then if you wanted to have the application under test be local, not in a cloud environment somewhere, so the application under test is on-prem inside your firewall, we can still use the cloud agents to drive the load, simulating real users coming in from geographical locations around the globe and testing the application that's on-prem. To accomplish that, we have to add another piece to the puzzle, and that would be the Cloudburst VPN router appliance, which gets installed, and the agents talk to the router talks to the application under test, and the results get stored back into Silk Performer. So nothing really magical about that. It's just that the cloud agents have to be able to come in through the firewall. They go to the router, and the router talks specifically to the application under test. So now we're ready for poll question 2, Rocky.
Okay, great. So the question is, where are you in your organization's use of cloud? Any cloud for dev and testing. So either you're not doing it's none, limited workloads currently, migrating workloads to the cloud, plan to migrate workloads to the cloud in the future. So we'll give it about 30 seconds for everyone that's on the call to respond, and I'll give you the feedback. So Bob, this is kind of one of the first webinars that we're doing, I think, on something that's not an HPE legacy or product in the testing world by talking about Silk. So that's kind of interesting, at least for our members.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we chose this webinar to do, is to introduce that there are similar products in the Silk family of solutions. And more importantly, when we're done with this webinar, it'll be clear to those attending that this solution is very unique in its capability to support the government cloud environments. So that's part of why we chose this topic to present today.
Great. Terry, let's see the results. So it looks like about 33% are not doing anything at 33%. 33% have a limited workload currently. Plan to migrate workloads to the cloud in the future is 33% as well.
All right, well, those results are on par with what I would expect. The new lips can't talk. The government agencies that we work with, all of them are in category B, C, and D for the most part. They have some limited workloads currently in the cloud, whether it's Azure or Google or AWS, and then another portion of them are in the midst of migrating more workload and then some of the projects are still in the planning stage. So those results are on par with what I would expect to see. So thank you for your responses. So how do you leverage Tilt Performer Cloudburst? The answer is you have a set of credits, and you purchase those credits through your normal sales channel. Whoever you are used to using for purchasing your load runner or your ALM or your UFT licenses through, you would work with them to get access to Cloudburst credits. Then those get installed into your portal for your Cloudburst capability, and I'll show you that in the demo. Then you, as you prepare to run the test, you have an opportunity before the test begins, before you're charged any cost, you get a chance to review what this load test is going to cost you when you actually execute it. So you get to review the cost before starting the test. You are the one that approves the number of credits that are being used, and you trigger the approval process to start the test execution. So you are in complete control of how much you spend and why you're spending it to accomplish your load testing needs. And then if you needed to, you could still leverage those credits for on-premise licensing behind the firewall if you needed to. So while the credits are specifically designed for use in the Cloudburst portal, you can also leverage them for on-prem if you had to. So some of the highlights before we get to the demo: we have the ability to provide you global coverage and limitless scalability, leveraging load generators that can automatically be spun up in these cloud regions. You have the ability to do the VPN support if you have to test in-house applications, leveraging the VPN router, and you have complete flexibility and transparency on how much you're consuming and why you're doing it as you use the pay-as-you-go Micro Focus credits model. So final poll before we start the demo. Rocky?
Okie doke. Would simulating virtual users from various geographical locations around the globe be useful to your testing efforts? Yes, not sure, or no are the response options. So we'll give it about 30 seconds. Give all 200 people a chance to respond.
This just for those that are listening and preparing their answers. This was something that we built into performance testing years ago with Load Runner, with an option called POPs, points of presence. And it worked in a similar situation, but it was a manual install of those load generators, and those physical boxes had to be up and running 24/7 for load testing customers that wanted to use them. So this concept of having geographically dispersed capabilities is not completely new. The way it's implemented now is new.
Okay, cool. Terry, let's see what we have. 100% is yes.
Good. Well, that's the answer I was hoping to get, but that certainly wouldn't have surprised me if there was, some not sure respondees. But yes is good. So that's again why we're getting ready to show this next part of the webinar, which is the demo. So at this point, I have to switch and bring up my Cloudburst instance running in the cloud. So bear with me while I log in, because it is a secure environment. And if I typed it in correctly, Well, bear with me. I'm just going to have to restart that session.
We love live demos.
Yes.
Well, this is probably a good time. I'll jump in here for a little bit while you spin it up. This is Russell. As mentioned on the call, this is really the first installment of having a Silk suite of products part of Vivid. Certainly, it's been the HP tools up to now, but not that Silk Performer is a new tool. Silk Performer has been around for actually 22 years, and I've been involved in sales in commercial and the public sector. For instance, a customer who uses Cloudburst and has used it for many years is the biggest brick and mortar retailer in the U.S. They use it to test for their Black Friday testing. And they specifically use the Cloudburst functionality, to drive that load from around the country and performance test their system. Certainly on the public sector side, there's a particular customer that wants to answer the question, can we handle the load when soldiers log into the portal to check if their paycheck has dropped at the end of the month? So they want to test for 80,000 users, and they are using Silk Performer to do that. So it's a very mature tool, been around a long time, certainly new to Vivid, but has been around for many years.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make too.
So can everybody see my screen now?
No, we're on the polling question.
Oh, sorry. So,
I mean, we're on the one from the Vivid side, the quick poll that didn't go down.
okay, so how do I? So now I need help, Terry, on how to show the demo. Because I have the demo up on my desktop.
Okay. And you're showing your screen, so we've just got to turn off. There we go. Now it'll come back to you.
So do you see the blue screen? Oh, here it is. Okay.
And you may have to say, I want to show my screen. There we go. There we go. We see it now.
Okay. So that wasn't as clean as I had hoped it would be, but now that you can see the blue screen, I just want to highlight, if you will, over here that we are running in the US Gov West. So that is the cloud region of AWS Gov Cloud that we are using. And I logged in as a user to the instance that we have running in the cloud. I have the Silk Performer workbench already up and running. And can you just confirm, Rocky, that you see the workbench?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not going to go into great detail on every button in the workbench. What I want to get to is showing you how we actually execute a load test leveraging the cloud and the cloud agents. But I will just spend a few minutes talking about the generic steps. So here we have the actual script. It's just called Web Project. It goes against a web application that we use for demos in the Silk Performer world. And just like I said in the beginning, that every load test still has to have a script. So if you're familiar with reading load scripts, this won't be foreign to you. Once you have the actual script and you've tried it, and you can do that using this button right here. So I'll go through that with you. So I'm just going to do a trial run of the test script, and I'm just going to use one virtual user to simulate to make sure that the script is working properly, it's ready to be used, and it's connecting to the application under test. So I'm just going to click run with one virtual user, and then it pops up a little window saying I'm executing. And at the end of that, it'll tell us, okay, no errors occurred during your trial script. You had one user, and you successfully ran 2 transactions. That's just a good sanity check to make sure that when we get ready to kick off the actual test, everything should be ready to be used from a script point of view, and the application under test is being talked to properly, that communication between the controller and the application under test. So then, as we prepare to get ready to do the load test, we need to tell Silk Performer what agents we're going to use for the actual load test. And if you look up here in the right-hand corner of the screen where it says Welcome Robert Linton and it says Micro Focus Credits, you can see I have a bucket of credits, over 4,000. And what I did prior to starting this webinar today is I went into the Silk Performer Workbench and I started 2 agents. So what you see here in this screen is I have 2 agents running that I selected because I didn't want you to wait for all of them to start up while we were doing the demo. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to start another agent. So when that happens, I get this pop-up that says, here's the different regions around the world. And you can see that there are cloud regions in Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, and South America that could be used. Today, we're going to focus only on those in North America. And I wanted to try to pull your attention to this particular agent here, which is the Amazon GovCloud agent that is residing in the Amazon GovCloud. It's hosted in the California region of the GovCloud. And if I come over here and say I want to spin up one of those agents in addition to the ones I already have, I just come over here and say add one. If you look down here, you can see I already have the one selected from Google because there's the one here in this column, and I have the one selected for Azure because there's one in this column. So I'm just going to spin up the additional one in the Amazon GovCloud region that's sponsored by one of our partners, CWPS. So this capability was not available, and of course, while I'm waiting for that, I'm just going to go ahead and start that agent so it's spinning up while I'm talking. And what you see here is that I added the third cloud agent called California Amazon Gov CWPS, and it's orange because it's starting. It's getting initiated. Communication is being shared between the controller, cloud portal, and the agent. And basically what's happening is it's going out to that Amazon Gov region. It's identifying that agent that's there. It's basically kicking it and say, wake up, get spun up, and connect back to this controller that's orchestrating this load test. So once it's spun up and it's connected, it's only connected to the load, the controller, the Silk Performer controller that you have control of. And so it's a secure connection, if you will, between your controller and that agent and nothing else. In this screen, you see the 2 green ones because they're ready to be used. They have an agent ID and they have an IP address assigned. While this is spinning up, you can hit the refresh button occasionally to see how it's progressing. And now we see some progress in this window because we didn't have this agent ID a minute ago. Now we have the agent ID, and it's communicating and it's establishing itself with the controller and the application under test. When you're done with the test, if you don't specify automatically when these agents should shut off and be deleted, you would come back to this window and you would come here and say stop the agents, and then you selectively choose the ones that you want to stop. Now, spinning up one of these agents on average is about 3 to 5 minutes worth of time. And like I said, you can continue to come here and click the refresh button to see if and when it's ready. So I'm just going to minimize this while I continue talking about the workbench and preparing to run the test. So when you get ready to actually run the test, you can come over here and adjust the workload. And you can specify different configurations on how you want to use this project, this script, against the application under test. For the purposes of today's demo, we're going to keep it to about 3 virtual users, and we're going to only run the test for about a duration of 1 minute. But you'll see a lot of activity while that's happening, and that hopefully will satisfy some of your questions. But if you have additional questions while we're going through the demo, feel free to type them into the question panel of the webinar. So I'm gonna stop this for a second. Then again, we can go here and say I'm going to assign agents, but because I already did this through the tools bar, I don't need to do it again here. But again, this gives you a really good expanded view of all the different cloud regions. So you see Amazon, you see Google, you see different cloud regions in other countries. And why might this be important to agencies? Well, as I said at the beginning, agencies have workers that are located in other countries. DoD has sailors and airmen and warfighters that are stationed in other bases around the world, and they still have to connect via the internet to applications that belong to their agency, and those agencies would like to be able to simulate real user experience coming from different geographical locations around the world. And that's why this list is so extensive, and also because it is a worldwide solution that is used by organizations in every major business around the world. Just to also review over here under agents, we can see how many are in use and how many are available. So in this case here, where we have Virginia Azure at the top, we have 1 agent currently in use, and there are 10 available to be spun up in that region. If you determined that in the course of your testing, you needed, like, let's say you were going to simulate users coming from Germany because there's Air Force bases in Germany, and you determined that 10 in that region was not sufficient for your load testing needs, then you would just communicate with the Silk team, and they would bump up the availability of those agents in that region so that there would be more, like 20 or 30. And that's something we can customize for you with a little bit of notice. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to cancel out of this window because I don't want to add anything more at this point, at this time. I'm going to come back here to my virtual agent cloud manager and hit refresh. And now we have seen that the 3rd generator that we just spun up for you is green, which makes it available for us to use as part of our test. It has its assigned IP address. So we are ready to go. I'm going to close this window out, not to confuse us in the near future when I actually start to run the test. So at this point, we've done pretty much all the preparatory steps necessary to come here to this green button to actually run the test. And yes, there's a lot more things that you can do with the workbench. And if an organization, you and your organization are interested in having a deeper dive into this solution specific to your organization's needs, then we would set up an additional webinar with Russ and myself or somebody else to present that and do a deeper dive into all the capabilities of Silk Performer. But at this point, I'm getting ready to start the test. It's asking me again to confirm what type of configuration do I want to use. I'm going to basically just go with the steady state. I have check mark down here the web project that I'm going to use. I'm going to simulate 3 virtual users, and I'm going to do the execution time, simulation time for 1 minute. And I'm going to come down here. Russ, did you have a question?
Sure. You probably want to click the agent assignment button and at the top, the tab at the top, and then you'll be able to see the actual distribution. So there you go. So notice in that left-hand column, there is a checkbox that says use cloud agents. So you can actually use exclusive just cloud agents or local agents, or you can blend the 2 together. And then, of course, you can see the line that is the script that's going to run and the distribution of those users, right? So there's the 3 IPs and just 1 on each machine, just so you can get an idea of, the organization of what's going on here.
Very good, Russ. Thanks for reminding me to show that capability.
Sure.
So now that we are comfortable with everything that we've selected, we come down and we hit the run button. And it's going to ask me one final question here about where do I want the results. I'm going to put them in a unique subfolder and give it a name and a timestamp. That way, if I go back and look, I can find it when I'm going actually to the actual folder. But obviously, the results are going to be visible here in the workbench when we're done also. But now is when you're going to get that panel that I was talking about, where you get to see ahead of time what the cost for this load test is going to be. You get to understand how many points you're going to consume, and then you get final approval to actually start and execute the test. So at this particular moment, what you can see what's happening here in the monitor panel is that the 3 agents are getting ready, they're initializing, but nothing has started yet. And if I drag this down, so you can see more in the top area, you can see that it's connecting to all 3 of those agents and getting ready to run. And again, before we actually start executing and get charged to be consuming our points, we get a pop-up window that will give us that estimated cost, and then we can choose to accept that and begin the run. So now I'm just waiting for that little pop-up.
Right, it's pushing the script out to each of the agent machines in the cloud is what it's doing at this point. And when it gets done, as Robert said, we'll get a dialogue of the credits we're going to consume, the estimate of credits we're going to consume for the test execution. And
so thank you, Russ. I don't know if everybody caught that, but in the background, we could see it changed from initializing to ready to start. That concluded that establishing that handshake, as Russ was explaining, of the controller uploading the script to the load agents and making sure that the communication was completely established. And now we get this consumption pop-up window that gives us a chance to review the cost. And at this point, for this particular test, we're going to consume 15 credits for the infrastructure. This is part of that you pay for the infrastructure as you use it model. So we're spinning up 3 agents, and basically we're consuming 5 credits for spinning up those agents, and then we'll cover more cost afterwards. But the other part I wanted to mention is down here in the virtual users, you're spinning up 3 users, and it's 1 credit per user. The thing to keep in mind and see here in this dialog is that those virtual users that you're requesting to use have a duration of 24 hours. So if I ran this test now and then an hour later I ran the exact same test, I wouldn't be charged the additional virtual user credits because they're still live for the remainder of that 24-hour period. So basically down here at the bottom, we see an account balance. This is an estimate at this point. It does say estimated cost because the cost may vary slightly when we actually execute, but roughly we're starting off with about 4,060 credits. And when we're done with this test, we'll have 4,042 left, minusing the 18 that we're estimating to consume in this test execution. So if I'm comfortable with all those numbers and I accept them, I just come down and click accept and run. And now we can see here in the monitoring window that the execution is starting and that it's actually started on some of the agents that we've specified to use in this test. We can start to see memory usage, CPU usage, responsiveness. Down in the bottom, we can see additional metrics, how many transactions, and all of this information is being captured by the Silk Performer workbench to incorporate into the report when we're done. So this is where, in my mind, the rubber hits the road, because at the end of the day, your performance engineers want this information captured, these metrics captured as part of the test execution, so they can analyze it after the run and try to determine if and where any bottlenecks are occurring and how they might be able to remediate the environment in which the application is running or the application itself to improve the performance and get more responsiveness. So our minute is up. The load test is finished. It's shutting down, and it's creating the report that we would see after any load test. what I'm seeing initially here is just a quick summary report. So basically it said we ran for a minute and 3 seconds. We had 3 users running on 3 agents, and we successfully generated during that minute and 3 seconds 488 transactions, and we had a maximum throughput of 38.30 kilobytes per second. And then you can scroll down and see some of the generic graphs. But if you want to have the, oh, before I forget, if you wanted to look at the results from each of those cloud agent regions, you could see that here in the individual icons here on the right-hand side. And then if you want to analyze the load test, you can come up here and click Analyze the Load Test, and it will create a comprehensive report that you've already specified. And this is where the engineers, the load engineers, are going to want to look and see how everything performed, come down and look at some of the results, the metrics, what was captured. And this is where Russ would shine in helping an organization understand, what they accomplished and what they've seen if they're not familiar with analyzing the results of a performance test. This report can be customized. You can add in different graphs and different sections. But down here you can see round time, response time. The capability is somewhat open-ended in what you can include in the report.
Right. So there's a complete monitoring tool related to it, so you can drag in any server you want to monitor and any of the measures on those servers you want to monitor, and then from there you can actually drag and drop different measures from those servers onto this custom report. So you can build your own custom reporting from any of the data that we collect across the servers or from the controller or from the agents. All of that is manageable, and you can report on it.
Thank you, Russ. So again, this is where we would basically say we're ready to conclude the load test. So we would come back over. I'm going to close this down for a second, and I'm going to minimize this. And then we would come back up here and we would say, okay, now we're going to analyze the results of the load test, and we're going to come up here to our tools section, and I'm going to go to the Cloud Agent Manager, and it's logging me in with my own portal. So every user has their own portal, and I still see that my 3 agents are running. So I'm just going to come up here and say, stop those agents. I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to say, stop selected. Now you can set this up as part of the execution to stop these agents automatically 1 hour or 2 hours after they spin up, but I like to come back and just manually stop them. So at this point, I'm going to minimize this window, and I'm going to go back into my PowerPoint. Is this slide now being shown?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I know we're slowly running out of, or quickly running out of time, so I just want to come back in and show you that our DevSecOps solution is an integrated solution. We leverage many of our own products, and we can work with open source and other COTS products that you may want to use in your agile DevSecOps pipeline. Obviously, ALM Octane is our flagship product for providing the capability to build these pipelines and execute across them. And our testing tools are down here that can be integrated into that pipeline automatically as part of that continuous integration, continuous development, continuous test. As I build this out. Then I also wanted to show you this slide that basically just says that many of our Micro Focus solutions, PPM, Octane, ALM, can be incorporated into the way your organization does DevSecOps with the different individual pieces of that methodology and approach that you use. And again, our application testing tools are down here in the right-hand corner with UFT and Fortify and ALM, and our performance testing tools, LoadRunner, Performance Center, Cloudburst. So I wanted to share with you that, this can be an example of how you would integrate all of this into a framework for your DevSecOps capability. And then this is a larger, high-level version of the same type of diagram. You could use portfolio management to start and kick off your life cycles and your development efforts. And then as you get into the cycles of dev test, our test execution tools are identified here and spoken about individually. I wanted to also mention that all of our solutions can be used from a safe point of view, and that our Octane product was actually built using the principles of SAFE. So we incorporate that into our methodology for creating the Octane product. And then summarizing, I'm not going to read this to you because you can read it afterwards. And I want to get to the point where we can get in some questions and answers. But basically, our Cloudburst capability allows you to run in many of these cloud environments, and you can simulate the real user experience coming from anywhere in the world. At the bottom, it's basically, this opportunity provides you to have control over your testing environment for your organization and/or your project. It is a pay-as-you-go model, and you can save time and money. Many of our customers use project money, which is referred to as OpEx money, to do this type of testing. They don't have to go out and get CapEx funding. So it is easy, it is fast, it is comprehensive. And the last question obviously would be, when do you want to get started? So as some of the next steps, you'll get a copy of this when you go back to the Vivid site, and you can download this and look at it yourself. But you can actually register for a Cloudburst instance at the link that's shown there. When you do that, you actually get access to the SaaS version of this. But you can also get, as part of that trial, you can get a 200 Micro Focus credits to try to get started and understand how the product works. And if you want a refresher in another fashion other than looking at this webinar, you can also go to this YouTube video and watch a similar presentation there at this Cloudburst video. So the final polling question, if you will, Rocky.
Mm-hmm. So the final polling question is, would your team like to be able to use a pay-as-you-test model? Yes, not sure, not really. So please take 30 seconds here and check off the box that's relevant to you. And that way we'll get the results for this poll. 20 seconds or so.
And this might be a good moment while the people are answering the question. And it is truly pay as you test. You can go out and download Silk Performer from the website for free. And it will give you one virtual user. So you can actually create all your scripting and validate that your scripting works with that one virtual user before you use any credits, before you pay for any credits. So it is truly, pay as you test.
Thanks, Russell. All right, Terry, let's see what we got. So the response overwhelmingly is not sure. 100%.
Huh. Okay, well, that is part of the reason why we want to have dialogues with teams that are doing performance testing. The thing to also keep in mind is that you can incorporate this into any other strategy you're currently using. So it's not a this or something else model. So if you're comfortably doing something with a tool from a testing point of view, from a performance testing point of view, and you want to then do these peak load tests, this could be a viable solution to add to your current capability to simulate that extra load while you're still doing the testing you might be doing with another tool like Load Runner or Performance Center. So at this point, we're going to open it up for questions and answers.
Yep. So if you've got a question that you want to ask this team, please feel free to go into the question panel and type away, and we'll try to address it now, or like I said, at a later point. So let me start with this one question, Bob and Russell. It says that as Micro Focus also has Performance Center, what is the difference between the Performance Center and the Silk Performer?
And that's a good question, because I mean, I certainly know the Silk Performer side of that question, the answer to that question. I really don't know the Performance Center side of the question.
Okay, so let me jump in then. The tools from Micro Focus have some similarity across all of them in the sense that they do performance testing. And what Cloudburst offers, especially to our government agencies, is the ability to automatically spin up those load agents for the purpose of that test in the cloud environment that the agency wants to use. So some of our government agencies say to us, we only are ever going to test in GovCloud, and it could be AWS GovCloud or Azure GovCloud. Well, currently, Performance Center doesn't offer the capability to automatically spin up load agents for the purpose of that load test in the cloud. So Cloudburst offers the differentiation of having that capability and additionally spinning up agents anywhere in the world in any cloud region that's currently available to simulate load coming in from those regions as part of the test. Now, again, you can do this all manually, but if you do it manually, it can take you days, weeks, or months to get it all orchestrated to be ready to use for a load test. And the differentiation with Cloudburst is in literally a few minutes, as you saw today, we can spin up agents in any cloud region and provide them and make them available for the load test. I sat with a government agency the other day in my home state of Florida, and they said, Robert, we have to request a load agent weeks before we're ready to do the test, because it could take 2, 3, 4 weeks before our IT organization provides a load generator for us to use as part of a performance test. They would benefit from this Cloudburst solution in the sense that they can control when they spin up the agents, how long they use them for, and when they stop them. That is now in their control of that project. So hopefully that gave you some insights as to what differentiates Cloudburst from other performance testing tools like Performance Center.
Great. Another question, what cloud providers does Micro Focus use?
Okay, so, from the government side, we support, AWS GovCloud, Google, and Azure. And as well on the commercial side, we have the same 3 vendors.
Okay.
Correct. But to add to Russ's answer, 2 months ago, the ability to spin up load agents in AWS GovCloud didn't exist. So we've added that feature specifically for our government entities that would like to use this solution in that cloud. We can automatically spin up the AWS GovCloud agent as I demonstrated in a demo. And while we're talking today, the team is working on doing the same thing in the Azure GovCloud, because many of our government customers say, well, we're going to always use Azure or we're always going to use AWS. So we want to have the same capability replicated in both of those government cloud environments where the majority of our government clients will be executing load tests.
Great. Next question. Does the complete architecture live in the cloud?
Well, it can, right? I mean, the typical install is you might have the controller local on your machine, and then you would pick the agents in the cloud. But certainly, we have that capability of putting that controller in the cloud as well, if you like. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Robert.
No, that's a perfect answer, Russ. Thank you.
But just as you saw, actually, Robert ran the controller in the cloud for his demo.
Mm-hmm. Great. And the last question that I've got so far, unless someone adds another one, and I think we've addressed this with, is how does your pay-as-you-go model work?
Okay, so it's based on credits. It's credits per virtual user per 24-hour a period, and it's also credits per hour per agent. And then what we do is you prepay credits, and as you purchase more, there's a volume discount on credits as well. So it's there's a sliding scale. So if you could, if we had a meeting and you could tell us the configuration of the load test you wanted to run, we could give you an estimate of the number of credits and the cost of doing that load test. So let me just repeat that. So it's VU credits per 24-hour period, and credits per agent per hour. So as Robert talked about during his demo, if you ran a load test of 1,000 users right now, and maybe ran that test for a couple hours, stopped it for a few hours, and then ran it again within the same 24-hour period, there's no new charge for the virtual users. As long as you're running the same number of virtual users within that 24-hour period, there's only one VU cost for the credits. But there is an hourly burn rate on the agents.
Sure.
So as you spin up those agents or shut them down. Okay.
No, that's great. I think that's all the questions we've got, and we're at the top of the hour. So let's see if we can close out the rest of the content. Bob, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, before I move forward, I just want to add that if anybody has a specific interest in following up on a one-on-one type of meeting with our team, Russ, myself, and others, we're happy to schedule that and dive deeper into your organization's needs and how this solution or any of our ADM solutions could help you in your testing efforts. So thank you very much from your entire Micro Focus Government Solutions team. And guys, moving into some of the vivid announcements as we wrap up.
Great, thanks, Bob. So, yeah, so just as a wrap up, these are the kind of webinars that you'll get from the SIG community or special interest community, in this case, the government SIG, Micro Focus Government SIG on the Vivid website. We're always looking for leaders that are in this space that want to get more exposure by presenting or leading the LUG or SIG. And when it comes to LUG events, those are local user group events. Here's a schedule that we've got coming up around the world. You can just read these off. I'll be involved in September in the Raleigh-Durham user group roadshow event. It's going to be half ADM, half ITOM. We're working with Micro Focus, we're working with partners and looking for end user presentations in this case, Raleigh-Durham, as well as in Washington, D.C. That will be on the 19th. That's been scheduled as well. So if you're a Vivid member, you'll be getting all this information along with that. So let's go to the next slide. So here again are the roadshow events. We've been working on these all year, and the next two are scheduled. So as I mentioned, both Raleigh and DC. Go to the next slide, Bob. You can register online and get involved. Again, they're ITOM as well as ADM focused, trying to bring updates to you in these regions. And there's the DC event as well. And so look forward to seeing anyone in that area to join in and be part of the local user group and share best practices. Always a win-win-win for everyone. And next slide, I think we're done with that. So at the end, please take a little survey. Tell us what you want to hear more about, and we'll try to bring that content to you. And with that, good day, everyone, and thanks for joining our special interest group session today. Thanks to Bob and Russell for your participation.
Our pleasure, Rocky.
You bet. Take care, guys.
Take care, everybody. Bye.